Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy. That is my co-host, Rob Dunham.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, we are back. We took an unintended Christmas break from the podcast.
I've come back with glasses. Don't worry, I'm still the same person.
Well, I don't know. We might not be able to tell the difference. I mean, it is quite the disguise. Oh, man. There it is.
I saw a trailer in the movie theater this weekend that's related to that, Ryan.
It is, yes.
It looked kind of super.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get that in the outline.
We'll
put that in there.
Why is it that no matter how bad the movie ends up being, it seems, for me at least, I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, Superman is such a iconic character that whenever I see a trailer for a new Superman movie, there's something in me that is filled with, is this the one?
Yes.
I hope this is good.
Yes.
You know?
I hear you. We will get to that in a moment. We absolutely will. But let's do the rundown here. We're going to, of course, hit up the box office, movies that came out this past weekend, and the results of said movies. We'll have a news announcement. If you didn't see the Christopher Nolan news, we're going to talk about that. And we'll revisit Christopher Nolan and the 10-year anniversary of Interstellar. So that's going to be fun. And we'll conclude with our watch list. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, let's dive in. So this past weekend, December 27th through 29th, the number one movie in the country, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What?
I am bizarrely surprised at how well these movies do. People like these movies. I don't know how many like 40, 50-year-old adults who are like, oh, I can't wait to see Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
They've just never intrigued me whatsoever. But this was the second week in the box office, and it finished number one again. Between weeks 1 and weeks 2, the drop-off was 36%. So it did really well post-Christmas weekend. So it came out right before Christmas. It did really well the weekend following Christmas.
That drop-off is good. Wait until we get a little further down the list.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Because people apparently celebrated the Christmas holiday by going to movies, which
they did.
Is the thing. Theater was packed when I went. So
let's just say, as we look through these results, very good Christmas.
Yeah.
As Thanksgiving was very good, Christmas was also very good. And that's kind of surprising given the fact that I did not view this crop of Christmas movies very highly. But 38 million for Sonic the Hedgehog over the weekend. Its 2-week total puts it at 137.5 million. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. Number 2, Mufasa the Lion King, in its second week in the box office, did 37.1 million. That is an increase of 4.8%.
An increase. That's not allowed.
So more people saw it the weekend after Christmas than saw it the weekend before Christmas.
Now, was it in a lot more theaters this week, or?
No. It was in 4,100 theaters the previous week, and it was in 4,100 theaters the same week. So
I mean, that is absolutely evidence that the Christmas holiday movie going thing is a thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Its 2-week total is $113.4 million. So about 25 million off the pace of Sonic the Hedgehog. But a solid showing for Mufasa. The surprising one for me is Nosferatu. Nosferatu, in its first week in the box office, finished third. Now, the number's a little skewy here because it came out Christmas Day. So you got 2 extra days as part of the thing, and this only takes into account the weekend. On the weekend itself, it did $21.1 million. But for the 5 days from Christmas through the end of the weekend, its total is $40 million. So for that type of movie on Christmas, people really did go to see it.
A couple things. So I saw this movie, obviously. I'm a huge Robert Eggers fan that's been documented. I'm shocked by this because I looked up the numbers, because looking at these numbers, I was like, what? And I looked up the numbers. The Northman, which we both thought was a very good movie. Made $35 million total domestic.
Yeah.
It made $12.2 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
And I honestly, comparing the two, I think I like Nosferatu a lot, but I think The Northman is a better movie.
And I would have thought The Northman would have been a more accessible film
exactly.
than Nosferatu. But I think maybe, is there a market for horror on Christmas? I don't know.
I am wondering where the draw
yeah.
came from for this, because the movie itself was exactly what the trailers sold you it was going to be. It's just like a very dark, very slow-paced drama based on the Dracula story in old time with old language. Like, anyone who went to this movie and was disappointed because they thought the trailers are misleading them, like, I feel like you knew exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And this is a 2+ hour movie that's like, it is, for me, it's like right in my wheelhouse. I mean, it's like drama, it's horror, it's long and drawn out. The characters are very deep.
Yeah.
But I don't like, it's not a casual moviegoer
yeah.
movie at all.
And a lot of Eggers movies tend to be that way.
Yeah.
Like, he really goes for the realism in terms of the characters, the settings, the sceneries. Like, he's not trying to make it as accessible as possible. So it is super surprising to see that finish that high and make that amount of money. I was making fun of it. Like, whose idea was it to release this on Christmas? But maybe it's just as simple as the fact that people want to go see a movie on Christmas. And if you're not going to see one of the two kids' movies, you went to see Nosferatu. I don't know. Maybe it's that simple. I included a sixth on the list, which we'll get to a second, because it was also in that same Christmas release. And I think it did fine, but not to the level of Nosferatu. So that's kind of surprising. Number 4 was Wicked again. Now, interestingly enough, it did 19.4. It also saw an increase. Now, it's been out 6 weeks, so it's not the same as like from week 2. But it did 37% more Christmas weekend than did the previous week. And this is including the fact that everyone had already seen Wicked. So,
well, this also has the added bump of they released a sing-along version.
They did
of the movie.
Yes,
and that's what I saw on Christmas Day.
And so that certainly probably aided people wanted to go back and see it a second time as a result.
Which is really funny, because when it first came out, they literally had stories and segments on TV about don't sing along when you go to Wicked.
Yeah. Wicked is up to $424 million.
Seems like that gamble paid off.
I believe it did.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the amount of money it's going to make for the second one. Yeah. Number 5, another mainstay in the box office, Moana 2, did $18.2 million in its 5th weekend release. That is also an increase of 37% from the previous week, despite the fact it was 190 theaters down. So it was in 190 fewer theaters, but did 37 more. It is $394.6 million gross for that particular movie. And it did include the 6th one because A Complete Unknown finished 6th. That's the biopic of Bob Dylan. Heavily advertised biopic. They really leaned into the advertising on this. You've seen this all over TV. I've seen it in theaters and stuff like that. 11.6 was its weekend, and this was another one that came out on Christmas Day. $23.1 million it made, which I think for a biopic is a pretty solid number. I mean, Oppenheimer skewed all biopics till the end of time, but for a standard for a musical biopic, I think that's a very solid number for the 5-day weekend. It just did not have the legs to compete with the other 5 movies that were already out there. So that does make me wonder if releasing it on Christmas might have hurt its potential box office. But maybe if everybody went, as it appears everyone did, maybe it still came out as good or better if it had been released as a more feature of a weekend than it did. I don't know. Any comments on any of the box office stuff?
Nope. Other than, like I said, Christmas Day is a thing.
It is. for sure. All right. Well, we talked about it a little bit already, but there were 3 movies that got released this past weekend. Nosferatu, rated R, 2 hours, 12 minutes. A gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and a terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Stars here are Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, who is doubling up on Robert Eggers. He was also in The Northman. And Robert Eggers is the director. The other one we talked about already, A Complete Unknown, rated R, 2 hours, 21 minutes. In 1961, an unknown 19-year-old Bob Dylan arrives in New York City with his guitar. He forges relationships with music icons of Greenwich Village on his meteoric rise, culminating in a groundbreaking performance that reverberates worldwide. Timothy Chalamet is playing Bob Dylan. Elle Fanning is also in this one, as is Edward Norton. And Baby Girl, rated R, 1 hour, 54 minutes. A high-powered CEO puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. Nicole Kidman is the star here. Harrison Dickinson is the co-star, and Antonio Banderas is also in this film. Obviously, we know you already saw Nosferatu. Mm-hmm. Either of the other 2 intrigue you?
Complete Unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I still want to see.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out a way to get to see that.
Yeah. I want to see that as well. I wanted to see it this past weekend, but the showtime around it was like 10:50, and it was like, yeah, I can't swing that.
Yeah.
With my schedule when I had to be, I was like, I can't swing the 10:50 showtime. So hopefully they'll adjust the showtimes and I get to see it. But yeah, that would be the one that I'm interested in seeing. So, maybe we'll have to do like a ranking of the biopic movies, the musical biopic movies that have come out over the last like decade or so, because there've been a number of them, and most of them have been at least to some degree pretty good. So maybe we'll have to do a list along those lines. All right, well, that's the box office. There's your update. So lots of stuff to go out and see. Of course, based on the box office results, all of you went out and saw them anyway. But there's plenty of stuff to see. Now, the big announcement of the past week was Universal dropped this on us. We know what Christopher Nolan's next movie is. And it's an interesting one. So Universal has announced that Christopher Nolan's next film will be an adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey, which is pretty fantastic. It is also going to be filmed in IMAX and filmed with brand new IMAX technology. So there's brand new IMAX technology, brand new IMAX cameras. Don't really have time to get into that now, but maybe that'll be something we revisit, because that's pretty interesting too. And it's really fascinating that this is his next choice. We do know a number of things else. We know that some of the people who are going to be in this movie, you're going to have Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Charlize Theron are all signed up for this film. So it's a massive cast. It's a massive, epic ambition here. Shooting is supposed to begin early next year, and it looks like we're coming into a mid-July 2026 release date for this film. So basically, it will release almost to the day 3 years after Oppenheimer. What did you make of this?
Talk about ambitious.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of different ways this could go. I'm really interested to see what he's going to do, how he's going to do it. We've seen him tackle some historical type things like Dunkirk. Obviously known for the big action. So this is kind of a combination of those things. And what does he do to make it modern but classic? Yeah. Is the question, because we've seen other movies like Troy, Kingdom of Heaven, like these movies that are big and epic and centered around these huge historical battles. 300 obviously is a completely different way of approaching that.
Yeah.
So what's his approach going to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be really, really fascinating to see where he goes with this because it's different than Dunkirk. It's going to be different than his other kind of historical thing in Oppenheimer. Um, it lends itself more towards an epic, and he's an epic director. I do kind of I think it's going to be fantastic, and I'm super excited about it. I was kind of hoping he'd go back to more like his time, one of his time themed movies, because those are my favorite ones. But I think this has so much potential, and if anyone can do this type of story well and do it to a brand new level to set the standard, it's going to be Christopher Nolan, and he's not pulling any punches with his cast either.
Yeah, what you don't know, it's the multi-timeline, multi-dimensional.
I would love it.
Yeah.
So this is a fantastic announcement. I mean, we've seen for a while like there have been cast members attached to his new film, but we just didn't know what it was. And so it was really fun to see the Universal update on that. Do you remember one of the last films that tried to tackle the Odyssey, or maybe one of the best known ones?
Like when was it like super recent?
2000s, or maybe I should say 2000.
I'm not grasping it.
Coen Brothers, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh,
Was
yes,
drawn heavily
yes.
off of the Odyssey. Yeah,
That was a very different take on
it is a very different take on the Odyssey.
Yes.
But it is possibly one of the more unique and well known of the Odyssey. So it'd be fascinating to compare. I mean, obviously they're going to be 100% different films than those two together. But it's really interesting, and he has been known. I mean, this is one of the things that's nice about Christopher Nolan is he turns his movies around. Like he finds his next project, he works on it, he gets it done. He's not one of those guys. He's not, shall we say, James Cameron, who will take so long that you forget that his original film existed. And
wait, they're still making more Avatar movies, aren't they?
Apparently. I honestly couldn't care less because I think they're inferior.
Apparently the world box office doesn't agree with you, but
I know. And that's like they're so overrated. It's just ridiculous. They don't deserve to make the money they do. I mean, the guy creates visual things that are very visually appealing, but he does not know how to write a story whatsoever. But anyway, Christopher Nolan does. And so therefore, I am super excited about the Odyssey coming out. That's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, we still have a year and a half to wait for this thing. But I will be very much looking forward to seeing the first hints of what we're getting from this.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and does he move forward from the success of Oppenheimer, and are we at a point with this movie where he's a certified box office, like people go because it's a Christopher Nolan movie?
I think he was already there, but I think the audience of people who will go because of Christopher Nolan is wider, which we're going to get to in a moment. Before we get to more Christopher Nolan, you did mention something that dropped recently as well.
Superman
trailer. June 11th, we get a new Superman movie. If you have not seen the trailer, it is out. It is interesting. What initial impressions do you have for the Superman trailer?
Can James Gunn save Superman? That's my main question. The guy who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies is in charge of Superman, has been made a big move to highly publicized moves to DC.
Yeah.
And this would be the character that needs to be redeemed or, brought back into positive light for DC to start to recover from some of the depths they have fallen into.
And the question for me is, does anyone in Hollywood understand Superman truly? Do they truly understand Superman? Because what we've seen recently is they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Hollywood's, the way they've chosen to make films over the last number of years has, I think, prevented them from getting at the core of what Superman actually is and what he's supposed to represent, because he's from a different time frame. And I think modern directors have trouble with that. And they do him a disservice by trying to sort of modernize Superman instead of letting the character be what he is.
Mm-hmm.
Will James Gunn correct that error? We'll see. One of the interesting things that struck me is it seems to have a number of visual tiebacks from the original 70s and 80s movies. Some of the, like, his suit looks very much akin to the Christopher Reeves version. Some of the other visuals seem to be drawing on elements and tying back to the elements of those original films. And I think in general, that might be a positive sign of trying to take Superman back to some of the roots of where it has been in the past. But I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly intrigued.
Yeah.
I certainly really want to see it. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
It's hard to trust DC right now.
At the same token, the fact that you're saying you are excited about a DC movie should tell you that James Gunn has some credibility.
He does. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies were on the whole, you could argue they were the best of the character trilogies. Like you could say Iron Man's or the Captain America's or the Thor movies. Like if you were just take the individual character movies, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy ones were the most steady of those. Some of the other ones you have wild ups and downs on those individual films. So we'll see. Yeah, looking forward to that one. And that one comes out this summer. All right, let's get into our discussion. Now, our discussion for this, I put up an article maybe 2 weeks ago, why Interstellar is still relevant 10 years later. And as I approached this film, I approached this because just looking at the numbers and the things that came out, Interstellar killed it in the IMAX re-release. Absolutely killed it. I didn't check the numbers this past week, but it was up over $20 million in almost exclusively IMAX re-release. So a movie that came out 10 years prior is doing almost the same amount as, like, the Bob Dylan movie made this past week. And it's releasing pretty much only in IMAX theaters. And so what that tells me is that there's something about this movie. There's something about Interstellar that captivates audience, that continues captivating audiences 10 years down the line. So I wrote an article about this. I spent some time thinking about it and wrote an article about it.
Quick aside, shout out to a friend of the show, Valerie, who went and saw Interstellar in IMAX at King of Prussia at 1:30 in the morning and got home like after 6 a.m.
Yeah, definitely shout out to that. I saw those showtimes. I did go see it at King of Prussia in 72 millimeter, 70 millimeter, but I went in the middle of the afternoon. I went like a 1 o'clock, like a 1 p.m. showtime. I was not doing the 1:30 in the morning one. I did see at one point they had like a 5:40 a.m. showing.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. Jeez. But that's the point. It's like, the demand was there.
Yeah.
The demand was there for this movie. And so I thought I would write a little bit about why. And so I gave kind of 4 reasons why. So I thought I would give you the reasons, give you a couple of hints at this, and let you respond to them with your thoughts. And if there was anything else that strikes you as to why this movie is so well. It is now the #1 IMAX re-release of all time. So it is the best IMAX re-release there's ever been. And so here's some of my reasons why. The rise of Christopher Nolan. Basically, I talked about the fact that leading up to last year, he was still a highly respected, well-known director. Studios loved him, box office loved him. But his star rose to a whole nother level with Oppenheimer last year.
Mm-hmm.
The success of Oppenheimer, both commercially as part of the Barbenheimer viral event, and then the subsequent winning of all the Oscars that movie took home, including Best Director and Best Picture, or Best Lead Actor. All, really, really well done. 7 Oscars for the film. And the case I basically make is um, it exposed Christopher Nolan to another audience, another group of people who would not have typically gone to see Christopher Nolan movies, who might not have been action fans, or might not have cared about, like his highbrow time travel concepts or anything like this. It exposed him to a new audience, and that new audience was then much more open to going back and seeing his previous works, like Interstellar. So I think you're revisiting, in some cases, they're revisiting a movie of a director who's at the top of his game and now at the top of his industry. And that really is part of the success of why this movie has stuck around. Because I think of the movies that deal with time, this is one of the more accessible to the average person.
I would say that there's demonstrated evidence that people who interact with a Christopher Nolan movie and have a good experience go back and see what he's done before, and realize, oh wow, he's been doing this for a while. And I think we've seen this in a few different epics, if you will, like Units of Time. For those of us who met up with Christopher Nolan, I think you and I are both maybe at this point with Memento, and we're like, oh, like, wow, that was a cool movie. I want to see what this guy does next. And then I think some people caught on at The Prestige, and they're like, oh, this is a really interesting, well-crafted story. Let me go back and see Memento, and then following, and and then there were people who got on with Batman. And obviously the other things are different than Batman. But then you go from that to, I think the first big momentous moment is Inception. Because I remember going to Inception because there were two groups of people who went to see Inception. A group of people who knew what he had done already and were like really anticipating this because they thought it was going to be something special. And then the people who were intrigued by it because they didn't know much about Christopher Nolan. And I think all those people walked out of the theater saying that was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. I heard people saying that as I physically walked out of the theater.
It was, because it was such a game changer. It was such a unique, interesting concept done to the exceptional level. And so I almost feel jealous of the people who just discovered Christopher Nolan and now get to go back and watch all of his previous movies. Because to get to watch those movies again for the first time would just be amazing. So that's the first one, The Rise of Christopher Nolan. And the second reason I gave is intelligent, emotional storytelling. And I hammer away a little bit at the mind. Some people critique him as saying he's a cold director and there's not much emotion in his films. And I use this film as one of the ones to dispute that claim. In particular, I referenced the relationship between father and daughter that is throughout Interstellar. And I think is kind of the heartbeat of the entire film. But in particular, that scene where he's coming off of Man's planet, or not Man's, Dr. Man's planet. And he realized he just lost decades due to time slippage. And then he's watching the video clips of his family aging before his eyes and just crying and weeping his eyes out. And then got into the message of his daughter where she's just ticked at him for how long he's been gone. Like, it's just heartbreaking stuff. Like that type of, like the ability to take an unbelievably difficult concept like time dilation and relativity and turn it into an emotional powerhouse moment. I think only Christopher Nolan can pull that off. And so I think that's that heartbeat story is why a lot of people who may not love some of his other films still manage to love Interstellar.
And I mean, I think that moment with Matthew McConaughey is the most emotional thing that he's done. But I also agree. also firmly believe that there's emotion throughout all of his movies, and that the thing that I've always appreciated about the emotion in Christopher Nolan movies is that it seems like it's grounded, realistic. So it's not over the top most of the time, and I think that's why people don't necessarily latch onto it.
It's not caricature.
I think you could say that. I mean, that scene in Interstellar might be like that's over the top for Christopher Nolan.
Yeah,
but I still think that it was powerful.
But it makes perfect sense in the moment. If that happened to you and you were in that situation, that is exactly how you would feel. You're overcome by the weight of what just transpired, and you're just unable to handle it.
Yeah, I think you could say maybe like jealousy or rage or some of these other emotions are more prevalent in his work. That doesn't mean they're not emotional moments. Like The Prestige is rife with that undercurrent of jealousy, striving,
or even the
insecurity,
the emotional payoff when you find out in Inception that he is the one who created the memory that led his wife down the road. Like that's a heartbreaking moment when you realize that, and they've been leading up to it and building up to it. Now, I will agree, Tenet is not a very emotional movie. Tenet is probably the coldest movies that he has done, but that's okay. Like, it's fine for that type of story. It was fine. All right. The third thing I came up with was the score. And this one is all about Hans Zimmer. To me, the Hans Zimmer score for Interstellar is one of the best scores I've ever heard from a movie. It is unbelievable. It's possibly his best work. It's one of the best ones. It is top 3 for me of all time movies. And literally my love of this score has increased my love for the movie Interstellar, which was already very, very high. Some scores are fine just being background and kind of shifting the emotion of the film or kind of telling you how to think or feel or what's coming up. Hans Zimmer's not like that, and his scores are not like that. They're part of the film. And as much as his score for Inception was an integral part of that film, the way the score drives Interstellar is amazing. And there are actually scenes that I look forward to the scene because of the interplay between the space visuals, what's happening on the screen, and how it's encapsulated and driven forward by the score from Hans Zimmer.
Yep, it does a great job of representing the expansiveness of the environment.
Yeah.
And I would say the expansiveness of the environment and the closeness of the intense moments too.
Yeah.
Because that song, Coward, that plays on Man's Planet, along with them figuring out what he's actually saying to them on Earth at the same time, and the organ that moves through that whole,
it's so
like 5 minutes might be, I could make an argument that's like the 5 to 10 combination of music and what's actually happening visually best.
Yeah.
Period.
100%
in film.
Yeah. And if you, for each one of these in the article, which I'll post in the comments section, I link to a lot of these. I link to a video, like I link to the scene where he's watching the videos, and I link to a live performance of Hans Zimmer performing like a 6-minute segment, like that 6-minute segment. It's incredible. It is so good. So I think that score from Hans Zimmer is one of the things that keeps people coming back to this movie over and over and over again because of how well it accentuates the film. And the last thing, for the last reason I had, was the accurate and spectacular visuals. Nolan, 100% known for trying to be as accurate as humanly possible. And usually that means not using CGI. That was not an option for a lot of this stuff, but he still chose his moments.
Couldn't fill on location of the black hole.
He literally planted. You spent $100,000 to plant cornfields outside of Alberta in Canada in areas that they told him it was impossible to plant corn in, and he found a way to plant corn in this. Not only that, on top of, just so that they could drive through the corn. And so he didn't have to use any CGI for that. So they actually did that. But then he turned around and sold the corn and actually made a profit on it as a result of that. So that's how Christopher Nolan actually, went into the farming business and succeeded wildly.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing it pulls around is every single space piece is jaw dropping, just unbelievable. From the like mile high waves on man's planet to just the ice wilderness of man's planet. It was I'm blanking on the other planet, the water planet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the ice wilderness in man's planet to the coup de grace being the black hole. And the fascinating thing about this is they did like these were the first times anyone tried to scientifically accurately portray a black hole and what it would look like. So they had Kip Thorne, the physicist, who had all the calculations for what a black hole should do and how light should behave around a black hole. And then they ran those calculations through the high-end graphics engines. And this stuff was so dense and so complex, it took 100 hours to render a single frame. So every single second you see a black hole took 100 days to produce. Like, and it's stunning. It is so good. The black hole shots, especially towards the end of the movie, are just mind-blowingly good. And actually, they gained actual scientific knowledge as a result of visualizing this. Kip Thorne went on to publish a number of scientific papers as a result of the discoveries they made for this process of visualizing the black hole. And I think it holds up 10 years later by far. So what do you think? Is there anything else that we're missing when it comes to why Interstellar is so popular 10 years later?
I just think it's a testament to people being passionate about something and telling their friends about it, and not shutting up about it. And I just think it is following an audience that continue to grow and grow and grow because more and more people just continue to fall in love with his work, like I said, at different points in the timeline.
Yeah. And as a side note, a 10th anniversary limited edition release of the physical copy of the movie with a bunch of extras came out in December, and I missed it by 2 days, and they sold out.
Oh, wow.
And now they're like 3 times as much on other sites. I hope they put some more back in because I was really ticked off when I missed it. But if you have any sponsors out there who want to send us copies of the 10th anniversary of Interstellar, feel free. All right. Well, that's Interstellar. Please check out Film for Fans. I will link to the article. Read the article, give it a look, and let us know what you think. We'll conclude today with our watch list, movies we've watched over the last week. Rob, what'd you watch?
I saw the Wicked sing-along, obviously. Had a fantastic time hearing my kids sing along, and then there was a guy in the row in front of me who was as into it as I was, and gave each other a high five at the end of the movie, and making jokes about Jeff Goldblum throughout the movie, and it was just a good time. There were a couple people behind us who said, as 2 theater nerds, this was the best Christmas present I've ever gotten. So it was great.
Nice.
And they had a very funny little introduction before the movie about how it was a sing-along, and Ariana Grande and the other lady came out and said, ran us through some warm-ups to make sure we were ready to sing.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool pivot that they did, that they were able to identify that and then lean into it. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And I also saw Mufasa and Nosferatu this weekend.
Okay.
I liked both of them. I think Mufasa I liked more than the live action Lion King, which came out a few years ago. It's the story before the story.
Yeah.
All new music, but did a really good job of including a lot of the cues from the original Lion King soundtrack, which I like quite a bit. And then Nosferatu was great, very deep, very dark, very intense, and downright scary in moments.
Yeah.
But it was exactly what I expected it to be. So
nice. I will mainly highlight the one that I did, which was Juror Number 2. Finally got access to Juror Number 2. It December 28th, it debuted on Max. I am still ridiculously ticked at what Warner Brothers did to Clint Eastwood on this film. They're basically like, well, we don't want to release it because we want to spare him of releasing a movie that would get him embarrassed. There's nothing embarrassing about this movie. It's a perfectly good movie. There's no earthly reason why they shouldn't have released it into theaters. And so Warner Brothers really, really screwed up and did a disservice to the cast and crew of this movie and to Clint Eastwood, the director. Now, is it the greatest movie I've ever seen? No, but it's a unique take on a crime drama. If you're not familiar with it, Nicholas Hoult plays a guy who gets picked for jury duty, and on hearing the case, a guy's charged with murdering his girlfriend. He suspects that perhaps he might have accidentally had something to do with this case, and he might have actually been the one who accidentally killed her and didn't know it. And so what does he do when he's on the jury? It's fast paced. It moves. It flows. It has a little bit of 12 Angry Men vibes to it at times. But it's a unique twist on the kind of murder mystery courtroom drama type thing. I thought it was good. There were a few things that I think were like, you could have spent a little bit more time there, or that character. Yeah, I didn't love that line or that dialogue, but overall, it was a very solid movie and well worth your time. So if you have Max, definitely check out Juror number 2. All right, that is all the time we have. Thank you for tuning into the Film for Fans podcast. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, and check out filmforfans.com for all of our articles and things along that lines. Until next time, enjoy the movies.